and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for small businesses. Now, in the midst of this global health crisis, countless startups are simply struggling to survive, which raises the question, what are the resources available at their disposal such that these entrepreneurs can resuscitate their businesses? It's a tough topic, but to tackle it, I'm joined by a very special guest. Please join me in welcoming the co-founder of Oddup, the CEO of Alluva, and the project lead at Recerve, James Giancotti. James, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure's all mine. Thanks for having me.
James, you've witnessed and weathered 4 recessions over the course of your career. So naturally very curious to understand, how can and should someone in your position, essentially empower entrepreneurs and convince them that adversity can in fact translate into opportunity?
I can understand what entrepreneurs are going through at the moment. I've been there, done that. And at this point in time, you're probably pulling your hair out going, what do I do now? I felt that 3 other times. This is the 4th time. And the key thing I can always say is take a step back and focus on what's important. As entrepreneurs, we always tend to sort of have a million ideas in our head and want to achieve all those. But, all of a sudden, this virus and this lockdown and this pandemic has sort of hit us over the head with a hammer. And so what I say to all entrepreneurs in this space is to not just do all the essentials, such as cut costs, make sure that you're planning ahead, and look at your balance sheet and your P&L and all that sort of stuff, which goes without saying. But it's also a good time to actually readdress what you're doing with your business and your own life. And that is an instance of, if you're a startup and your idea is not working out, and you've got a bit of capital still, well, this is an opportunity to rejig the business. Or if it's a startup that is very heavily capitalized and has a lot of expenditure, well, you cut costs and then look at now in this time of how can we do better, how can we become more profitable. But if you're in a scenario where you've gone, look, I just wanted to get this idea off the ground, this is actually a perfect time to look at what the market is changing to, what they're prepared to do. Good example of this is previously to 2019 or before. People were happy to go out and do stuff, whereas now the world's changed. People stay at home. People can work from home. So come back to your idea. Come back to the scenario that you're in. Be smart and conservative with your cash, of course, but focus on how am I going to come out of this. And where's the opportunity here? Some of the best companies of the world were created in this time, particularly the recession. So this is a great time to start a company or, rebuild a company to what you want it to end up being.
That really parlays nicely into my next question, which is, tell us more about your latest venture, Recerve. My understanding is that it's loosely built around the concept of a reserve fund, which certainly seems to be the need of the hour as far as the startup community is concerned.
It's a soft spot to my heart. I've been fortunate enough to know no one that has died from this virus, and I only know 1 or 2 people that have been sick, but thankfully fully recovered. But I know a lot of people in the hundreds now who've lost their job, reduced their hours, lost their business. And so the biggest issue that I've been seeing, particularly in this space, is that people are going to struggle much harder than the actual virus. The virus has been terrible and everyone's concerned about it, but the aftermath has been pretty brutal. And so Recerve was set up to help people in the scenario that they can get support to start a company when they've got potentially no money, no security, nothing. So one of the things I was blessed to have when one of our early investors, 500 Startups, was who helped us, is they helped us connect to doors to get free things. And so we said, well, why do you have to be part of an accelerator or a VC firm? Why can't you just start a startup and get these free things? So Recerve was set up so that if I've got nothing and I've got an idea, I want to put something together, we'll help cover your costs. So that's setting yourself up, getting a free year service on Amazon, getting free payments on Stripe. All the companies that you could expect to help us are there to help you. So, it's about $1 million worth of perks and free stuff so people can just start a company. And it's a passion project for me because I've always been in the startup space and I've seen so many companies not get the support that they need to get further. And so, here's an opportunity to start a company. and get funded from it, with $1 million worth of stuff so that you can, build the next, great company in the world. So that's really where it started up. So it's a passion project for me and all the volunteers that help us out. We just want to see companies get created and companies survive and companies flourish when everything seems hopeless.
Yeah, well, give us a sense of who you've partnered with in this context, and what are some of the amenities and facilities that startups that are part of the Recerve project can now avail?
So one of the things we sort of did was we called our friends in Silicon Valley, particularly because a lot of the companies were like the companies that are listening to this space now, like us when we first started. So we spoke to them initially and said, what can we get for free for these companies? So some of the facilities for people is, a good example is, if you're going to start up an e-commerce site, you get the first $50,000 of transactions through Stripe for free. You get your company created for free. You get your domain name created for free. So all these things are for free to help you get started. The companies involved Stripe, Square, Amazon. Oh my goodness me, there's so many. Most of them are recerve.com. I can't even filter so many, but we've got about now about 150 partners. And the main reason for all these people helping out is because they were exactly like us and other companies that just started out to begin with. And this is a way for them to help out people in need as well.
So say a startup wants to become a part of the Recerve project. What's their first step? Whose doors do they knock on? How do they begin to take advantage of the perks, as you put it? And is the Recerve project limited to startups from specific geographies?
The easiest way to get started is to just go to recerve.com and sign up. And that's as simple as that. But before you even do it, my advice is come up with an idea first. Get a piece of paper, design, put a project plan together, a business plan, what you're selling, what you're not selling, what you're designing. I think that's the first step because, the perks from us start from day one. So you want to be in the space of going, I need those perks now and sign up to us then. So if you're still unsure and say, I want these perks, great, more than happy to give them to you. But my advice for startups is, rather than get the perk and not do anything with it, find out what you're doing and then get the perks. From a geographic perspective, everyone in the globe is welcome to it. So we've got entrepreneurs down the platform from everywhere, from India to China to the US to Chile to Sydney to South Africa. Everyone in the world is welcome. The only difference is because of where we're structured, the company that gets created for them would either be in Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong, or the US. We'll add more geography soon. But that's happening, as we speak and as we grow the platform. So this is just a resource so people can get all these free stuff and make magic happen. So signing up is free, everything is free, and hopefully some amazing companies come from it.
Sure. Now, while of course companies can and do take advantage of the perks that, the Recerve project avails them, it's equally critical for them to keep their operational costs low. So how do you advise these companies in this context? Especially given that oftentimes they're struggling between difficult decisions, technology versus talent, for example, how to raise capital, for example. What sort of advice do you give these companies in terms of keeping costs low at this especially critical juncture in their life cycle?
There's probably two answers to that question. Companies that have already established versus companies that are brand new. For companies that are brand new, I direct them to go to Recerve and get all their free stuff, and that will be sufficient for 99.9% of companies who want to get started. So that cost part will get taken care of. Whereas for companies that have already been set up and started, the key thing is to look at your budget, to look at your balance sheet, and particularly look at, element of deployment of capital. Good question is, can you raise? And how soon can you raise? So realistically, something that would take 2 to 3 or 4 months may take 8 to 12 months now. And so as a founder, I would be looking at, reducing my expenses now and really focusing on saying, okay, everything is going to double its time to get done, as well as sales going down. So the focus, I guess, for founders to sort of is not just cost cutting, but also to look at becoming a minimal viable organization whilst things are getting done. What do you need minimum to keep the company running, as opposed to having everyone on board. Now, that's terrible. Lots of people will lose their jobs by that. But, part of the startup's journey is to survive the next day, to get to the next stage, to keep on growing, one bit by one bit. And that is, the advice I give to people, survive another day and you'll come out of this 20 times better.
Sure. And are there perhaps a suite of apps that you may recommend that are, particularly effective for entrepreneurs looking to keep their costs low, perhaps in the context of a marketing and sales function, or a legal function, a finance function, or perhaps even a management function for that matter?
So this could be a wild goose chase of how much stuff you need, and it depends on, of course, what your sector is. But if you're just a standard software as a service company, I would look at replacing a lot of the paid versions of your analytics tools, or a lot of your chat tools with Slack, or that's where I would look at saving your money, or even stuff like the Microsoft suite, because a lot of the big names have become much more free so they can build up market share. So a lot of the smaller products that you bought, you spent a lot of money on, you can actually reduce it by going to some more free support. So that would be my first and smartest way to manage it. And particularly, I would look at apps that are very much integrated in a total workflow. People are using Zoom, they're using Google Meet, they're using Skype at the moment. They're all free tools as opposed to paying for tools to enhance your business. But look at tools that are free. Do you need to pay for a full Office suite when you can, just use Google, the Google suite, such as, Sheets and Slides and so forth. So my view is to just look at, ways of saving money by going free.
Well, if we've talked about so many of, the tangible tools that entrepreneurs need, another sort of aspect to this is, of course, the psychological healing and answering so many of the questions that are very valid in the minds of entrepreneurs. Many of them have sort of lost their will to continue to compete in this sector. What would your words of advice be to someone in that position?
The startup journey is terrible, amazing. It just changes, and that's just in the same day. I look at a mountain with lots of, sort of crevices in them as a startup journey. Now, running companies, I think it's better for me now because I've done quite a few of them. But, initially, if it was my first company, everything is a disaster and you take it on board. I've learned to take every disaster as an opportunity. There's something else here. Maybe there's something else that can happen from that. And so, I feel for entrepreneurs out there that are probably pulling their hair out going, what do I do? The difference is look at the negative and positive in everything. And so even though if it's a negative, there's a positive out of it. That's the way to survive. Otherwise, you will go mad, you'll go sad, and you'll end up, finishing the product and not, sort of not continue with it. So every time I felt as an entrepreneur, it was the end, something amazing happened. And so that's the advice I can give people. Just keep on hustling is probably the best way to say it.
Sure. Now, hustling, of course, becomes a lot simpler when you have the strength of a strong team behind you. So for entrepreneurs that are struggling to build that management team over the course of this lockdown, how do you suggest, they essentially tie themselves by? Given the lack of resources and given the sort of limited ability to recruit in this environment?
They've got a positive thing coming their way. There'll be a lot of high quality people they can get around the world and not just save money, but in the next 6 months, they're going to take the pick of a bunch. We're seeing this now in the US, where there's a lot of people who are, paying through the roof prices in San Francisco going, well, for the same amount of money or even 50% less, I can live in a mansion, in the Midwest. And so even though at the moment it's hard to find those people, telecommunications and teleconferences, which is what's happening now, is going to actually get people to, find some amazing people as long as they're prepared to work at sort of interesting times. So the key thing I would tell entrepreneurs is if you've got a small team and you're wanting to grow and you can't find those employees, get your process of what's happening now, i.e. your Zooms, your Google Meets happening correct. Because as you grow and you find those people, that's how you're going to manage them. You don't need to have them in your own office. So even though they can't find people now, admittedly, they may not be able to sell anything now, and it may be hard, but as things change, you'll be able to find some amazing candidates all around the world. That's been something that we've been looking at, and we've sort of implemented it, and it's been amazing and less stressful, to be honest. So I'm actually quite excited about this new world that we're living in.
Now, you've, of course, dabbled in the Indian market a fair amount between your multiple ventures. Are there any characteristics unique to the Indian startup landscape that have taken you by surprise?
You don't know what you don't know. And so when I first sort of, and when we were working at Oddup and sort of launching 2017, as a market, the India market is just growing at a rapid rate. It sort of reminds me of what China was 5 years ago, and now where China's ecosystem is exceptionally advanced. So I actually see the Indian startup market growing exponentially, particularly out of this pandemic. If anything, I actually would say that's where the most amount of amazing companies will come from. So I think what surprised me the most is the willingness of people to, really help out. It's a nice ecosystem where people are still loving, and it's more modeled on the San Francisco space where you could pick up a call, and people are wanting to help, and tell you their life experiences and what they can and can't do. So that is something that I really hope stays in the ecosystem in India for a very, very long time, because that will make it much more successful than many in the others in the world.
Now, the Silicon Valley where you're from, of course, has several incredibly successful entrepreneurs of Indian origin who are sort of serving as brand ambassadors for, all of the possibilities that Indian entrepreneurship brings with it. So for many of our youngsters who are still on Indian shores, who you sort of look with envy towards, their counterparts abroad, what words of wisdom might you have to share in terms of the vibrant opportunities that the homegrown Indian landscape may offer to those entrepreneurs?
Well, I'm going to give some advice from someone who made his success actually in Hong Kong as opposed to the US. US is where we've grown to, whereas, the early stages, Oddup started in Hong Kong, and there was 6 companies in that space. We got a lot of focus, we got a lot of feedback. It helped us grow because we had more people willing to help us out. And so with an earlier, more younger ecosystem, you can actually get more awareness for your product much faster than going into, being a small fish in a big pond in Silicon Valley. And so even though Silicon Valley is, the end game, everyone wants to get there, try be the big fish in a small pond where you are, and then move to, into that sort of valley mindset. And remember that if you're brilliant in your own market, be amazing there. I sort of use this as the Australian actor analogy. There's a lot of Australian actors that become successful, actors in Hollywood, but there's some few big ones, of course, but most of them don't. And so it's the same analogy of sort of being a superstar locally and then no one knows about you in the States. Whereas build an amazing company in India, the people in the States will know who you are, and they will help you grow and get you there. That's what I found was the success for us. We were big in Asia, and that helped us become successful in Silicon Valley, as opposed to going to Silicon Valley and people go, no, I don't know who you are, I don't care. And that's how it helps. So that's my advice. That's a little cheat sheet for anyone who wants to be successful in the Valley.
Well, James, thank you for a series of insights you've shared with us over the course of the show. We truly appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure was all mine.